So I'd like to call this meeting to order. And the first item up is any visitors, staff to be heard. That's not part of the agenda. All right. Next up will be Principal Hughes and principal's reports.
So welcome to Summit Street School. We're very pleased to host this meeting. This is a school where 250 children come every day. It's the most children since I came here that are coming every day. And as you can see, we have prepared a few things that we wanted to share with you. I'm not sure if you're aware that last week we celebrated the 100th day of the school year, which is a significant number, a significant day, and we kicked it off with an assembly led by Mrs. Mann's first graders, who talked about what life was like 100 years ago and how it's the same and different to life today. I'm sure you can see the connection to the Common Core standards. It was marvelous. We are so proud of our school, and every year we try and improve and grow. And this year, we decided to highlight a few things that we have implemented that are in response to trying to continue to grow. First, could I just ask the Summit faculty and staff to stand who are in attendance? They can never hear enough about the quality of work and dedication that they bring every single day. I could tell you a million stories about all of these people and how much they love our kids and how hard they work to meet their needs. So all of you who are not Summit faculty and staff, and some are standing back there, come back over here. They won't know who you are. Can you wave, please? The rest of us will clap in recognition of this.
District staff is here too.
Yes, I do notice that our district staff is here. I wondered why all the IT people were back there in the corner and asked, is this us? Are you doing a presentation that I didn't see on the agenda? Yes, and Judy is right. We couldn't do our job without the support of our central office colleagues. Technology has never been as alive and flowing in our schools, and so I thank Vince and his team, and we'll all appreciate you. Is there anyone else besides IT?
Mary, we're here for you. It's been a pleasure and honor to miss you. But man, we've been through some really good stuff.
And Bruce is here as well, and Bruce has been here through thick and thin, through all kinds of changes. So we thank you. And if you're a Summit parent, could you please stand? Parents, please stand.
Yeah. Nice.
The one word that comes to mind when I think of parents, we've got PTO leaders here, we've got, I can just tell you, partnership. They are partners in their children's education. So thank you to our parents. So when we analyzed the climate survey last year, we saw that a relative area of focus was the emotional safety of our children. And it was a relative weakness because it wasn't bad, but we noted it was the one area that wasn't as strong as the others. So with that, Ms. Wageman, our school counselor, did a survey of our second and third graders and asked them, actually use technology and clickers, you'll be glad to know, and showcase pictures of all different places in our school. And the children identified the areas where they felt the most safe. And one or two of the areas that they didn't identify were places on the playground. And with that, we brainstormed as a leadership team, as a planning team, about what could we do to make our school as safe for our children as possible. And one of the ideas we came up with was one that Ms. Wageman and our third graders, some of our third graders are going to share with you. So are you going to introduce them, Ms. Wageman?
Yes.
Great.
Hi, I'm Ashley Wageman. I'm the school counselor. And these are my third grade friends. Say your name.
Evan, Oliver, Molly, Gabby.
And as you can see, they have their initials on their hats because they are our playground buddies. We have 15 playground buddies, 5 from each third grade classroom, and they were specially chosen because of their character. These are responsible third graders. They are respectful, they're outgoing, they're friendly, they're problem solvers, and their teachers felt like they would be great guinea pigs for this new program, and they've been out there working really hard. They go out, there's 3 of them each day, different third graders each day, and they go out to first grade recess. So they each have their like zones, so they are paired up with a grown-up outside depending on which grown-up is in which zone. So if, let's say Miss Spreen is in the field, and what zone is that? The field is not 2 or 3, right? So it's 1. So one of the students will have their have a zone 1 card on. They go out and they meet Miss Spreen out in the field, and then they help Miss Spreen solve problems. They look for students who will also tell you. All right.
I'm Evan, and I'm zone 1 in GS3, and I basically help us set up the games and help us solve problems.
Can you give an example of a problem you may have solved so far?
Pushing and fighting games.
So what would you
Okay,
do if you
that's-
saw kids playing like
Good
pretend
plan.
fighting games?
Good idea.
Now these kids have been through some training. We met like once a week during lunchtime and went over possible scenarios for different parts of the playground where they role played what they would do. And so they have been trained.
My name's Margaret, I'm zone 3, the overhanging blacktop outside near the playground. You're walking up and you start, even when it's dark enough, then when you walk up and students. So, I usually have problems with, like, there's like, people like to make forts in like this little corner. And so sometimes there's problems like some people are like stick fighting or like not sharing and stuff. Like problems that aren't safe.
Thanks. Thanks, Tyler. Molly?
I'm in zone 3 and I like help out we help out with kids who are like blacked out or they're like playing they're play fighting and they don't know what to play. We like help them out. My name is Gabby. I'm in zone 3 and I usually what? I'm in zone 3, but I'm just from and and so I usually help like when other classes are learning under the blacktop and some kids go under there and just be really loud and it sometimes disturbs the learning, so we have to have them stay out or be quiet. So yeah.
These third graders know our playground rules like the back of their hand. They know they give up their lunch once a week to go out and be playground buddies. And I think we're going to try to get some new playground buddies in the next month or so and switch it out and see, because I think this program is working really well. I have not heard, and I don't know if I'm right about this, but I haven't heard lately about there being any significant issues out at recess. And I think a lot of it is because of these very responsible, caring third graders. So, yes. What's it?
One event solved.
You did? You want to give an example?
One kid pushed another kid to get in the front of the line, and so they wouldn't go that push, they would say sorry, and so yeah.
So what did you say?
I just kept like I had like talk them into getting close to each other so they could say sorry.
And that's something that maybe as third graders you don't, I mean, that's just, it comes natural to you, but for a first grader maybe they don't realize how to work out those problems. things get unsafe, you know, there's always a drone up there, so I just, you know, sometimes they're not up there right now.
Well, thank you very, very much, third graders and Ms. Wageman for this community service project, which I know is making a difference in our school. And if they have to leave, it's okay.
Yeah, that's awesome.
As you would want, we are always striving to close the achievement gap. And last spring, we took some time and looked at our data and decided to implement a research-based reading lab that has been implemented in the fall. And I've asked our learning specialist to please share a little bit about this program that we're offering and some of the results. So Regina Sewell is going to speak a little bit, and Mary Reynolds-Wall and Valerie Gill-Collins, our three learning specialists.
Hi, I'm Regina Sewell. Mary asked each of us to talk a little bit about the reading lab. I jotted down a few notes, I wouldn't forget anything. Basically, it was set up to help children who struggle to meet grade expectations in reading. Last year, we piloted a program called Level Literacy Intervention, and we piloted it at the first grade level, and we found it was successful with many of the students that were in the program, so we decided to implement it on a school-wide basis involving K-3 students. In order to do this, we were able to purchase additional materials that we needed, and what we're basically using is a system called the Level Literacy Reading Intervention System. And it is a scientifically based reading program that's designed for small group instruction. It's designed to assist children who find reading and writing difficult. It's aligned with our assessment system that the classroom teachers use on a regular trimester basis to see how children are progressing. The lessons are provided on a daily basis and include reading, writing, and phonics and word study. This instruction, it's important to remember, is in addition to, it supplements what the classroom teachers are doing with those very same children in their classrooms. Progress is monitored on a regular basis, and one component that we particularly like is that there's a very strong home connection. We provide the identical book that we are working with the students with on a daily basis, and we send that book home every day. And the nice component about it, it's a copy of the text, and they're able to keep those books at home. So the children are actually growing a library of very books that we're working with. We also have been able to get another set of those texts, and we provide them to the classroom teachers, so the same children have those books in their book boxes. So they constantly have familiar texts always with them, either at home, and at home and at class. As primary level teachers, it's really important that we know that we've got this opportunity in grades kindergarten through third grade, and this is the time where they learn the how-tos of reading as well as the love for reading. And this program is helping us to help those children who struggle with reading not only get that extra daily opportunity to learn those skills, but also grow that love for learning to read. So,
Here I'm next.
Work out.
I think I'm next, actually. So our program is open to any student at all having difficulty meeting the reading benchmarks. And that's one of the advantages, is nobody's excluded. And what we do is, in the fall, based off from how the children were assessed at the end of the school year, we take those students who didn't meet the benchmarks, and we do a quick reassessment right immediately when they enter school to see, because some children make gains over the summer, other children regress over the summer, so the needs when they left might be a little bit different than when they arrive in the fall. And based off those most recent assessments, curriculum-based assessments, then we jump immediately into intervention. So there's not a lag time. Right at the beginning of that first week, we're assessing, and by week 2, we've got them in groups up and running.
Hi, I'm Mary Reynolds-Wall. The program runs in a way that there's 2 locked-in sessions that the teachers committed to, in that we do reading labs from 9 to 9:30, and we do reading labs from 2:20 to 2:50. The teachers are kind enough to send the groups of kids to us. They come down to the learning specialist office where we have the groups. We also have the opportunity to meet weekly with our classroom teachers, and we have the opportunity to discuss progress with them on how the children are doing. We appreciate the fact that the classroom teachers, when they look at scheduling field trips, take into account the reading lab and try to leave after or come back before, and that their schedule is locked in and they are just as committed to the reading lab and how it runs as we are. And so we definitely appreciate their support, and it wouldn't be as successful if we did not have that from them.
Thank you very much. So that level reading that you mentioned is also reinforced by a very special project that Carrie Mahoney is going to tell you about. She can't reveal all the details because there's a lot of secrets, kind of.
Well, good afternoon. I'm Carrie Mahoney. As you know, this amazing thing started happening at Summit Street School last year in my classroom. These people call themselves the Book Folks, and they started every season, every month actually in my room, they started dropping off a book to us. So the students would unwrap this book, and it had a special message, and we could talk about the book together. We would try to decide who these book folks were. We had common language among our classrooms, so we really started to be able to build a community as well as build a library of books about every topic, from science to multicultural activities, everything. And then all of a sudden this year, the book folks started delivering to the school. Every classroom started receiving a book. And so we received our very first book in November, and I just wanted to showcase it a little bit, called The Forest Has a Song. And whoever the book folks are, they definitely knew that we are trying to work on building a natural playground. This book takes the student through a journey through the forest throughout the year. It also has some wonderful poetry in it, and writing pieces, and we do a lot of writing with Lucy Calkins. So that was great. It came to every classroom, and it came with a note, very motivational note, hello amazing readers, and a message, a very personalized message. A poem inside, a teeny tiny little poem. So maybe the book folks are this, we don't know. It gets super exciting. And then the very next, about 2 months later actually, they delivered the next book, which was called Cross Country Cat. So this also is very special, this book. Somehow they knew, because Mrs. Hutton's going to talk about a very special opportunity that we just got this year around cross-country skiing. So this is a great adventure. So the whole school now has come around to try to figure out who these book folks are and how they know so much about us. And it's really, the next note was very similar to the first one, telling us their continued support around our reading, how amazing we are as readers. Another little note about winter. So we hope they keep them coming. We really look forward to seeing who it is, or eventually maybe revealing themselves. But we can only put the book plate in there that says from the book folks right now, so the children know this is a very special book in their collection.
Very nice.
So
I think that's about it. And so this big sack comes to the office, and sometimes is sitting on my chair, and I can't wait to go around, because I don't know where they came from. They appear, and I get to bring them into the classroom, and the children are so excited. It's just been very special. All right. That leads us to wellness and developing the whole child. And this year, our PE teacher, Rosalind Hutton, in collaboration with one of our parents, Eric Bowker, are going to talk about a very special program that, thank goodness, we've had snow for. So I'm going to turn over to you.
I'm just going to put a slideshow on of some images. There's
no music or anything, but the images are just gonna play, so I don't want it to be too distracting if I watch the images as we're presenting.
They'll tell the story better than we can.
Yeah. Okay, and then we'll come over here to the top. Are we good? I know.
All right, so probably about a year ago, almost a year ago from now, one afternoon when I was picking my son up here, he was a kindergartner last year, now first grader, I stuck my head into Mary's office and without really a plan, I said, hey, how would you feel about having cross-country skis in the school PE program? No pressure, no, not trying to sell you anything other than a program. And she went for it. So the next step was to take it to the PE teacher here, Rosalind, and the two of them, as far as I know, coordinated on a program to allow the school to buy a sets of skis for all the students to use from the Ks to the 3s and everything in between, not the entire school at once, but we got enough equipment to outfit every single class with boots, skis, and poles, which we haven't used much to the kids' demise, but we'll get there. So I luckily, just due to my work, have the ability to help schools purchase skis. Rosalind worked with the fun run and the PTO to fundraise some of the money.
Yeah, the funds. We also worked together to, like, even last year we started taking kids' sizes so we could figure out like our whole order. And so kids knew this was coming because we were talking about it. And so then starting this year, as soon as we do the fun run, which is an annual wellness event anyway, that we raise money for different things, and it's been Natural Playground, Hurricane Katrina, different things, and this year it just seemed fitting to use that for our skis. So then the kids knew this was coming, and like the first flurry in the snow, they're all running the gym, we're skiing today. So it's been really great. And so for the students, they're getting this opportunity to participate in this lifetime physical fitness activity that they probably otherwise wouldn't had it not been for Eric walking into Mary's office. But it also is a great connection to our curriculum, and for my students, when they go on to 4th grade and ADL and the high school, they are cross-country skiing. So I'm now getting these guys prepared for what comes next. What else did I want to say? And it's also like the equipment is now available. Families sign it out on Friday, so families will come and sign out their skis and their boots for their kids. And it's really encouraged a lot of families to get outdoors and really embrace Vermont winter. And for some parents, they've been telling me how, oh yeah, I used to cross-country ski a long time ago, but now they're like, oh, my child knows how to do this? Well, they're getting back at it, so it's been awesome. And with the help and the partnership with the PTO, awesome, it's worked out well. And Eric's been coming to help on at least 2 days a week. He's out there with me, teaching me, and it's not just here's these skis, get the kids on them. I'm learning how to actually really do this. So it's been a great partnership.
That's part of the package I offer to help teach as well, and that's been a lot of fun for me as well. It was particularly exciting because the skis showed up in about probably late November, and they just sat there waiting, building excitement for this program. So it's been fun to actually, luckily, get some snow, put this thing into motion.
Well, thank you for this vision that you brought to our school, Eric. I really appreciate the hours you've dedicated to this. And Rosalind's always ready to do anything to help our children. So thank you both for this wonderful. So this is kind of a nice segue to our natural playground. We have many of the members of the Natural Playground, or at least a couple of them. Gracie has been involved in this project for many years. Tim Kemmerer is at the computer right now. Is there anyone else here from the playground committee? Yeah, Mrs. Bagnell-Jenner has been part of this. Well, it all counts. And we meet almost every other week to continue to bring this design to real life, and we're getting closer and closer. And so, a few months ago, Tim came to our faculty meeting, and so our faculty has seen a lot of this presentation. We wanted you to have a status update on where we are. So Tim, are you ready?
It's the projector cycling, I guess.
I turned it off, I didn't know.
Gotcha.
Sorry.
No.
It's like the old gym lights.
Yes,
Cool down
save
before
our
you
light
start
bulbs.
again. Yeah.
It's good we save our light bulbs.
Okay, so I'm Tim Kemmerer. I think I know the board members, actually. Hi, Jeff. It's been a while. And I got about 6 slides for you to give an update and make a request. So I think Mary was just saying it. We've got a regular group of, I guess we call ourselves a subcommittee of the PTO. That's meeting every 2 weeks to work on the Natural Playground project. I think you guys know about it in general from before. So I'll give you a little update here, and in terms of where we're at right now, if I can get other. Okay, so projector working. Okay, so I've got a few slides. Real quick on the background, I think you guys kind of know that already. Give you an update on what is phase 1, which is already done, and then kind of the current state, and then a little slide at the end, you know, kind of talking about the whole thing. So just go ahead and go down to the next page. So we need to replace the structure, and like we do every 15, 20 years. I don't know what the timeline is. So, you know, we're working on this natural playground option, and we have the design plan, the master design. So I kind of pulled in the kind of overview of the vision, what the idea is to really enhance what's out there for the kids, for the community. So go to the next page. Right now, the way we have it structured, kind of phase 1, phase 2. So this part's done. There's the pictures. There's the reading garden that's out back. If you've been out back on the playground, you've seen this in various states of the seasons. So really, this included the design plans, which was kind of a big deal. We know we need to do that. It's a big piece encompassing the whole property out there behind the school. And you know, we were able to build so far these 2 smaller sections of the playground without needing to disturb the current structure and the big field. And you know, we did raise a chunk of money, but really mostly through small donations from really primarily within the Summit community. So there's a big thank you to go out there to a lot of parents, a lot of people who've worked, and some little things that we've done along the way. But really, now we're through that, we're into the next part of it. So just go to the next page. So I just give the big overview of the whole thing. I tried to label a lot of the elements that would go into this phase 2. And really, it's the big structure removing the existing structure, and the site work. And so that's site work, that's a big deal, to prep all these structures and then build these structures. So the big deal is, and you can't sugarcoat it, is, you know, we need 6 figures to do this. So we need like $125,000. We've been doing some fundraising, but really that's getting going now. Our target build date is the summer of 15. So that's what we want to shoot for. So we've got to get that in hand to be able to do a contract to get it done that summer. so far, just to kind of an update of where we are, we approached the Essex Junction businesses at the end of last year, and we're following up with them now. We've got a few donations coming in, that's great. So I just kind of wanted to thank Murray's and Transitions Physical Therapy, who's a former Summit parent actually, for their donations. That was great, and that's really just the start of it. So that's a part of our fundraising, you know, to kind of approach the businesses. There's more businesses to get to that are in the broader community and some targeted places, so we've got to do that. And there's a small group working on grants. There's a series of grants out there, but all that has to be timed because they're on a cycle and we have to use the money typically within a year. So we have to time that to go in for those grants basically kind of now and into next year to target the summer of 15. There's also an event that we can announce here. You'll see a press release about it, and everybody's invited. But there's a silent and a live auction at the Darkroom Gallery on April 12th, and this is a fundraiser. One of the great things that's going to be there is projects. I think there's 13 sort of collaborative art projects that Mrs. Foley's going to work on with each class. So what we really hope to generate is some desire for these projects that is only one per class, but you'll bid on them live. We'll auction them off as a piece of artwork. They're actually chairs. So that's artwork that parents or whoever could put in their house, but collaborative artwork. So that's one of the things that we're doing there, plus lots of other things. So there you see the thermometer. We have a big empty white space in there. So that's what we need to fill. On the next page, I have just some, I pulled these off of examples that just to make sure, give people an idea of, what it looks like. And you can see there's site work because these structures are a lot more than just the flat ground that we have out there now. We have to build up little hills so we can put the climbing wall in it, make the slide come down a little hill, and then, we have other things as well. So this is just kind of an example of some of those things. So I think we can go to the next page. So this is where I said, I think this is more than just a playground. And I talked to Michael about this, right? Since you guys, the board, are also the Parks and Rec board, which is really like the community thing. This, I think you can see it. It's really going to be a community resource. It's a big green space that's close. It's really the closest one to the parking lots and really the downtown core of the junction. And it really looks like, in the end, you get out of it is this great playground and this sort of multi-age interactive park. And also, the rec programs are already using it as it is today as a playground, but I think obviously it could be even more used after that. So what does that amount to? That's what we think is a good way to do this, to recognize it as a community resource and to ask for a part of the funding through the rec budget or the school budget. Okay, I think that's for you guys to figure out if you want to do that and where is the best place. Okay, we have both of those places to go. What we think is reasonable is only 10% of this phase of the project, so just a small portion of it, but to make a significant contribution to it for us, and that we can then keep going with other fundraising methods for the rest of it. So that works out to a little over $1 a resident, and really just to make sure that it's clear, it's only for the construction. So this is like a one-time thing. We already have that built into the plan to cover the regular maintenance, the ongoing thing. So this is like a construction kind of thing to get us going on this phase of the project. And maybe you guys could divide it over 2 years of budgets. The timing into trying to hit that build date of 15, though, is kind of critical for us, summer of 15. And I put this on at the end. I don't know this. We don't have any that I know of right now, matching grants, but often there are community matches needed for some of the grants. So we don't have that right now, but that may be something we need. And then this could fulfill that matching amount. So that's really all I had for you. If you have any questions, I could answer them, or that's it.
Thank you, Tim.
Thank you.
I just want to add that everyone is invited to the silent auction that's coming up, and I'd like to invite you all personally.
It's very nice.
Thank you, Tim, and all the dedicated parents that spend hours trying to make this work and make this a reality. So that concludes the principal's report. I know many of my faculty will need to leave, and the children may need to leave. But thank you, that's the principal's report.
Can I ask Tim
Yes.
a question? Tim, I have a question for you.
Yes.
We found out as a board a couple months ago, we have a group of parents, so we have to put an article, we're putting an article in the budget for safety, some safety additions. It'll be a separate article. But in those discussions, there was a building security safety inspection report. And part of it is you may want to get together with Judy or Grant. There's a section on it about the natural playground. And unfortunately, that the terrain that are part of these types of playgrounds do not meet safety standards outlined by National Recreation and Park Association. So I want to give you a heads up, you may want to get hold of that report.
Yeah, we already did. So
You
we
did.
saw that, and that was obviously a concern for us because that was actually completely the opposite of all the information we had from the sort of expert company that we've been dealing with, that actually that's not true. And so that was really a big surprise to us. So we had this guy come to our 2 meetings ago already and kind of work through with him, okay, what was he talking about, what were the specific concerns, and a lot of it was kind of general concerns, and so not actually down to the detail of what were the fall zones, what were the things that were built into our plan already. So I think we really resolved a lot of that.
We did. And what ended up happening was he offered us his business card and said, as you plan and you go forward, we are a resource to Vermont and to Vermont playgrounds, and we are willing to come and help you and certify that what you have in place is okay. I realized that was an alarm to us as well, because it was like, where did that come from? He hadn't really seen the plan yet. And since then, and before he came to see us, he had reviewed the whole plan. He didn't have any specific concerns, but he did say, we are a resource, we help schools, we help districts to just make sure their playgrounds are safe. So as you go through the phases, call us and we'll come in.
Okay.
So he took all the worry away, to be honest.
Okay, so you knew about it.
Yep.
Okay. And the other piece is just everybody on the board to realize is that because the playground would be on school grounds, that any funding that we would decide to put toward it would have to come through the Essex Junction School District budget. Even though, like Tim said, is that it would be a community resource, and folks, even though that the rec money and the school district's money all comes from the same group of people, how it's requested is very specific, and then it has to come through the school district.
Because the funding, the pots are different.
Correct.
Municipal, Essex Junction is municipal
Right.
taxing, and schools are the Act 60.
But is there anything to prevent EJRP, if they decided, for whatever reason, from donating money to the project?
That I don't know.
Oh, okay. Okay, I thought you were excluding them right away.
But no, I wasn't.
Okay.
Only as far as specifically.
Right, I understand what you're saying.
Designating.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
To say to the community, let's say, just for example, that you say, all right, we would like a additional $30,000 for, to put toward the playground. It would have to come through the school district budget side of things. That's all. Any other questions, comments, concerns? Well, thank you. Okay. Like Grant to take a moment, take a nice big swig of water, get those vocal cords limbered up, because we're going to get a presentation of the budget.
Okay.
What's that?
Proposed budget.
Proposed budget. Okay, proposed budget. They would like me to specify.
All right, so as the board members all know, this is the culmination of 4 budget work sessions that we've had. So since this is the 5th one and the board's familiar with this, I think I'll just try to go through the whole thing to make sure we get all the slides in, and then at the end we'll see if there's any other questions or comments. So what we'll talk about is the school district budget, which consists of the general fund, the capital plan, and the security article that was briefly mentioned, as well as recreation and parks, general fund, and capital plan. And before I get into the specific budgets, I just wanted to talk about a couple of state law changes that impact how we have to represent the budget. Special education must now be provided, and the costs have to be shown in the SU budget. So that means that the district's special education costs, the specific line items like outside placement, those kinds of costs, go away in the district, and instead it's replaced with a special education assessment. So the cost is still a district cost, but instead of multiple lines, it's just one line called the assessment. As far as financial audits go, those also must be provided, and the costs have to be shown at the SU level. So the district doesn't have audit costs anymore, but it did cause a little bit of an increase to the SU assessment to cover those costs. Excess spending threshold was reduced from 125% of the prior year statewide average spending per pupil down to just 123%, which could be a very big issue, but luckily for Essex Junction, we're still over $2,000 below the threshold, so we're still in very good shape. The good news is the 2-vote provision has expired, so we don't have to worry about kind of that strange language we had in the articles last year. We're back to the typical article language. And then just to look at the budgets at a glance, the general fund budget, the article will be for $17,885,282. Skipping down to the education spending per pupil line, that ES/EP, you can see the excess spending threshold is almost 16,200, and our spending per pupil is just at 14,000. So we've got a nice margin there still to deal with, and our education spending per pupil is going up 3.9%. And I'm going to actually show this slide, a bigger version of it, in a few seconds, and we'll talk about some of the other details and numbers. But then just to move on, because it does say at a glance after all. The second section here is on the school district capital plan. That's largely funded by a reserve fund, a capital reserve fund, and we kept it level at $226,000, which is this year's amount. And we're proposing a $25,000 article to bring in some new tax revenue, so that as that capital fund draws down, we'll have some new tax revenue backfilling it. For recreation and parks, the general fund is $1,742,988. It is, though, constrained to a level tax rate, so that increase is largely covered by program revenues as opposed to a tax rate increase. The capital plan in rec is limited to 1 cent on the tax rate, and that is estimated at about $106,000. It depends really on what the grand list is, so it could be a little more, it could be a little less. The school board's guidance, if you've been through a budget or two, this guidance is pretty familiar. Just a few little tweaks here and there, but obviously it's the number one priority is to maintain a high level of educational quality. And we want to support the school's action plan and to be sensitive to the burden on taxpayers with a focus on education spending per pupil. The capital fund I was asked to keep it level or reduce it. We did keep it level, and also to make recommendations related to the depletion of that capital reserve fund. For recreation, for the general fund, we were asked to keep a level tax rate as we have for the past decade or more, as well as for the capital plan to tie that to the tax rate and to limit it to 1 cent. And then going into the school district, as we started our work, we had several considerations to keep in mind. The number one that was on our mind was that the projected base tax rate was going to go up by 7 cents, is what we're thinking. 7 cents is by far the largest base rate increase I've seen. Last year was 4 cents, and I thought that was a lot. 7 cents is unheard of in my recollection. So we knew that there was going to be a tax burden. We also knew that based on enrollment projections, we were likely going to need to add a 4th grade class. The third bullet, it's kind of good and bad news. Health rates, the health insurance rate is increasing 4.5%, which is a lot. We don't like anything to be increasing by 4.5%, but it's actually less than what we thought. This year we're dealing with a 9.5% increase, so it was good that it's much lower than that. But still, a 4.5% increase in your number one benefit cost is a lot to overcome. Also, the legislature is looking at private preschool, and there's some discussion about setting a statewide rate, and what we've heard is that rate could be $600 higher than what we're paying this year. On the revenue side, we know that our fund balance is decreasing by $180,000, which is no surprise because we've been building tighter and tighter budgets, so we have less money as a surplus to roll forward every year. Also, we know that the non-personnel special education costs are going up by about $234,000, which causes the actual budget to increase, but you'll see under a favorable condition, we're going to get more special education reimbursement to partially cover that. So the expense budget is increasing by that full $234,000, but our education spending isn't quite that much of an increase because we get some of that reimbursement back. Some other favorable conditions are that we have an increasing pupil count in Essex Junction, which is very rare, as I'm sure you all know, within the state of Vermont. And we also had an early departure incentive about 3 or 4 years ago, and we've paid off all those incentives, so we had a little bit of a savings there. For achievements, well, it's good I started with Summit because we already talked about all these things, didn't we? It's almost like you planned it that way. So Summit is celebrating some various programs that you just heard about, and they're awesome, especially intrigued by the playground buddies. Those kids were very impressive. At Hiawatha, they're celebrating some assessment results and also their before-school exercise program. And I'm not going to go into all the details of this, but the briefing will be posted on the board's website. So if anybody wants to go back later, tomorrow morning we'll try to update this and get it posted so you can look at it in detail and go through all the details of these celebrations. Moving on to Fleming, they're celebrating their students' participation in the Vermont Young Writers Project and artistic performances, as well as technology advancements and some staff professional development. And then last but not least, Albert D. Lawton is also celebrating advancements in technology and progress towards standards-based instruction and reporting. And whenever we talk educational quality, if you've seen a few of these briefings, you know that we usually just talk about the kneecap, and we talk about how we compare to the statewide average. This year we decided to take one step back from that and look at how Vermont does compared to other states. And the answer is very well. They do very well compared to the other states. That chart there shows how Vermont ranks, and we're in the top 5 in all the areas measured by the National Assessment of Educational Programs. The one data point I couldn't find was a 4th grade science. It's not missing, because of some oversight. I couldn't find a data point on it. But the rest of the data points you can see are 1 through 5. It's interesting if you can put in the back of your mind 8th grade science, number 1 in the nation for Vermont. if you keep it in the back of your mind for this next slide, how we do compared to the state. So you look at now the state's scores, and you look at science. We're number 1 in the nation, but as a state, only 40% of the students are proficient. It just makes you wonder about that test, doesn't it? But even though only 40% of the students in the state match are proficient, 50% within Essex Junction are. So you can see, compared to the state, Essex Junction ranks rates anywhere from 8 to 14 percentage points higher than the state average, and that's in a very strong state. So something really to celebrate. Also, just as a footnote there at the bottom, you can see that since we're transitioning to the SBAC testing, this is the last year that you're going to see kneecap results for reading, math, and writing. Unfortunately, science is the one we get to keep, but reading, math, and writing will go away, and we'll start reporting out on SBAC results in the future. For enrollment projections, as you can see here, if you can squint, we've had increasing enrollment from FY10 all the way through, we're projecting FY15. And as I mentioned, that is extremely rare in this state. The projection this year was 1,034. We actually ended up with 1,043, so almost a 1% more than what we thought. The enrollment is pretty stable. You can see for the next 3 years, we have a little bit of either an increase next year or pretty stable, and then we drop off a little bit according to the projections until we level out around 1,000, but still, that's pretty good. We're in pretty good shape. And now I promised I would show this slide again, and I'll go through it in a little more detail. If you first look at the expense budget, the increase is about $902,000. The board started at $982,000, so we've chipped away about $83,000 or so of the expense budget. If you skip down to the capital fund contribution, you can see that's where we're going from having no money set aside for new tax revenue and bumping it up to $25,000 so that we can start transitioning between that depleting capital fund and new tax revenue. We don't want to go from 0 to $215,000 in 1 year, because that would just cause havoc with tax rates. And you'll see that a little bit more brought to light in a future slide. Education spending, you can see the increase is 7.3%. That's a big jump in 1 year, but to put it in a little more perspective, the board knows, and hopefully most taxpayers know, that in FY11 we were one of the few school districts to meet the challenges for change, and in FY11 to FY12 we cut the budget to the bone. So I think it's useful to kind of go back to FY11 before that happened and look at what education spending has done from FY11 till now. And if you do that, education spending has only increased 2.9% per year. And we have 62 more kids than we did in FY11. So when you put it into that context, yeah, it's a big jump from 1 year to the next, but if you look at it over a period of time, it's not so much. Education spending per pupil, I already mentioned, the threshold is 16.2. We're at 14, which is pretty low. I would say probably below statewide average. Our spending per pupil is going up 3.9%. We had started at 5, so we were able to bring it down to just about what the estimate is for education spending increase statewide. And I didn't talk about it, but I guess I should point out, this is the equalized pupil count is going from 1027 to 1061. So 34 more kids projected for next year. Some of these slides I can go over pretty fast, like this one, the pie chart that just shows you where the revenues come from. Obviously, most of it comes from state, although education spending grant is made up of tax revenue, including local funds that go into it. But mostly it's state revenue. We have some local revenues, like the fund balance. We have one federal revenue still left over, Title I money. And then we have one that's in the category of other, and that's a bond defeasance fund that pays off long-term debt. Let's see. Some significant changes in revenues. The fund balance is down $180,000. And as the note says, I mean, we're fortunate to have any kind of fund balance to carry forward. That means we ended the year with a surplus in FY13. But as we build tighter budgets, we end up with a smaller surplus each year. So that's one of the reasons this is coming down. Education spending is really just the line that balances revenues with investments. The fact that it's going up is an indicator that the tax rates are going up. Special education reimbursement is up almost $270,000, and that's aligned with higher special education costs, which you'll see in a moment. And those costs mostly are driven by some high outside placement costs. Medicaid reimbursement is down about $40,000. In FY14, we funded a clerical position with Medicaid funds, and the understanding was we were only going to be able to do that 1 year, so that's why that goes to zero. Title I, we know, everybody knows that federal revenues are drying up. This is more of a decrease than you might expect, but that's because professional development is another one of those, I didn't mention it, but it's another one of those legislative changes where we're supposed to be showing, I think it's professional, well, not professional development, but Title I supplemental services are supposed to be in the SU. So supplemental services and professional development costs and the revenues got moved over into the SU. And then just all the other categories combined net to a small increase of $360. On the investment side, this just shows you where how the categories play out. I have to excuse me for a second because I've gotten myself mixed up on this. Okay, I got it. One of my slides got flipped over and I completely lost my train of thought. This pie chart is the investments, and you can see that 76% of the budget goes to salaries and benefits. And whenever you realize the fact that shared service is really U46 employees that support Essex Junction, and really that's salaries and benefits too. Whenever you add that in, you're really talking about 81% of the budget is salaries and benefits. And then you've got some other, decent sized ones like the SU assessment is out there, the special ed assessment, utilities, but most of the other items are pretty small. And then you get to what's called other, which is all the supplies, equipment, travel, testing materials, everything else is only 3.1% of the budget. And then if you look at just the significant changes from FY14 to FY15, salaries shows a very large increase as far as the size of the bar goes, but percentage-wise, it's not really that crazy. It's only 4%, and that includes staffing adjustments that we made. It's just that the total dollar amount seems very large because most of our money is in salaries and benefits. The benefit cost increase is about 6%. A big piece of that is because health rates went up 4.5%. Another piece of that benefit increase is that if you add some people, of course, those are new people who had no benefit costs. So when you bring a person on, you're also bringing on a full benefit package as well. The special ed assessment and the special ed bar, one going up, one going down. If we didn't have to change how we booked special education, what you would see is just one bar that goes up about $234,000. But because we have to change the way we're booking it, and you have an SU or a special ed assessment offset by a decrease in the individual line items within the district for special ed, it looks like you have two very big changes, a big plus and a big minus, but really the net of those two is $234,000 increase. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. Private preschool is increased. We think we're going to see an increased rate. That's why the increase is there. If we don't see an increased rate, then we could always bump up the number of slots. The rest of the ups and downs are pretty negligible. That Title I PD shift, professional development shift to the SU kind of makes up some of this other decrease. But then to look at some of the significant line items in a little more detail, you can see salaries and benefits is up almost $600,000. And as the note says, since salary and benefit costs make up over 75% of the budget, we spend a lot of time looking at that and looking at how enrollment projections will play into this, class size standards, student needs. The salary itself is going up 4% with those staffing adjustments, which you'll see in a moment. And then the benefit increase is up 6.2%. We talked a little earlier about the fact that we're going to get more special ed reimbursement. That special ed reimbursement will help with the non-personnel, like outside placement costs, but it also helps out with the salary and benefit costs, because a lot of those salary and benefit costs are related to special ed employees. And then just looking purely at special education non-personnel, you can see there's a big increase in the special ed assessment, which did not exist this year, and then a drop-off in the district special ed costs, and the net impact you can see is that increase of $234,000. And I already talked about, the fact that this is driven by law, and that it's not a dramatic increase and a dramatic decrease. It is, the net is an increase of the 234, and it's driven a lot by outside placement costs. And some of that extra reimbursement revenue that we get in will help to cover the majority of this. At the very least, it would cover 56%. If there's some extraordinary costs, it could be a higher percentage. Private preschool partners.
Can I ask a question?
It's up to the board, I guess.
Real specific question on this?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to know it's mostly because I wasn't here when the last contract was done, what the salary, contracted salary increase, because that's built into this, right?
We're doing negotiations this year, so there hasn't been a settled contract yet.
Yeah, for next year it hasn't been.
Oh, it's not settled for next year, which
Right.
this one would be part of.
Correct. Yep.
Got it, okay.
For private preschool partnerships, this is going up $36,000, and it's just to maintain the 60 slots that we have with private preschool partners. We're thinking that the statewide rate might be $600 higher than what we're paying currently. If not, then what we could do is increase the number of slots, which we would need to do if we want to get to that universal access point. Right now between the statewide or the preschool partners and our in-house capability, we're at about 90. We need to work our way up to about 160. So hopefully the rate won't be set $600 higher, and we'll be able to actually add maybe another 10 or 20 slots. But those are the options. We can cover the rate increase if there is one. That would be the first thing we would have to do. If the rate increase doesn't happen, we could increase the number of slots. If we choose not to increase the number of slots, then perhaps we could end up just under-executing and have a little bit of a surplus to roll forward. Some other investment changes. Title I, professional development, I already mentioned that is the revenue and the cost is now in the SU, which explains why that's down. The SU assessment is up about $45,000, but part of that is because financial audits are now part of the SU assessment. They weren't before. Another increase is that the SU is now the employee for substitutes, which means the SU's Catamount health costs went way up and the districts went way down. So part of that cost got shifted. So if it wasn't for that, then we'd be dealing with a pretty nominal increase in the SU assessment. Utilities, looks like we're going to be able to take another decrease by about $5,600. I'm hoping that the issues that we've seen on the news in the past few weeks with the explosion in Canada, that has caused a big spike in natural gas prices, but from what I've been told, that's a temporary thing and it's not going to affect long-term costs, although I have been sweating a little bit more lately. Information technology is up almost $20,000. A lot of that is software costs. Also, we're budgeting for an upgrade to the phone system, which is now about, I think, 9 years old, so new switches, things to make sure that we maintain that E911 compliance. And then, of course, everything else just kind of lumped together nets into about a $2,200 increase for everything else combined. And then the staffing adjustments, I kind of briefly mentioned this. We have an additional 4th grade section at Fleming that we're planning for, which is the largest increase in the staffing that we have. We have an education technology integration specialist that was an SU employee that will be instead a dedicated resource for Essex Junction next year. We're shifting from a world language exposure in grades 4 and 5 to a technology and keyboarding requirement. So that is actually a savings because we'll use existing staff plus that additional piece of the EDIS to cover that requirement for the additional keyboarding and technology, and the savings in the world language will be able to actually be booked. We're counting on 2 additional paras for kindergarten. You know, ideally, we'd love to have 6, one for every for every kindergarten class, but it's too much to try to swallow in 1 year. So we're hoping that 1 para at Summit and 1 at Hiawatha will at least be a help. And then there's the last line is just a very small increase for preschool or before school exercise at a couple of our schools. And this slide just kind of shows why we need that additional 4th grade class. If you look at the chart up above, you'll see for 4th and 5th grade, the maximum average size is 25. You should be below 25. And if you follow that arrow down, next year we're at 24.8 in 4th grade. And if we just have 1 more kid, that would take us to 25. So that's why we're adding, instead of 5 classroom teachers, we'd have 6 here. And then you can see that bubble that's kind of out there would follow and would probably end up needing a 5th grade section next year, a 6th grade section the year after. But we'll see how the enrollment projections play out next year to see if that's really how it will need to be. Special education. This just shows you the amount that's shifted from district cost to the special ed assessment. How much was district and stays district, and then you can see the total at the bottom. So really that arrow is pointing to the increase of $234,000, and that shows up as a decrease in the district's special ed budget. And then it also shows up as an increase in the special ed assessment of $477,000. Now we get into the fun math, the homestead or property tax rate for K-8. The top chart just shows how we get to the district spending adjustment percentage, and then that carries down into the bottom, or the big chart. We take the base tax rate of $1.01, which is what we're hearing it's going to be based on what the tax commissioner has put out. That has to be set by law, but most people are assuming that it's going to be $1.01. So you take the $1.01, multiply it by your district spending, divide it by the common level of appraisal for house values here in Essex Junction, and then multiply by the percentage of the kids in Essex Junction who are in grades K through 8. So as you're trying to look at the 50 numbers on that chart, some interesting facts to kind of point out. The estimated statewide average equalized rate is $1.55, and we're at below $1.51. So that's a good indication that we're spending below the statewide average. Also, if you go down to the very bottom right corner of that second chart, you see that increase of 9.3 cents in the tax rate. That's a large increase, but when you look at the 9.3 cents, 6.9 of the 9.3 is caused by the base rate being 7 cents higher. If that base rate was 94 cents again, then instead of 9.3, you would see 9.3 minus 6.9. What's that? 4.4? Oh, 2.4. So that's the big chunk is the base tax rate increase. It would actually drop another 1.1 cents if we just had the same percentage of kids that were K through 8. You know, the fact that we have more kids in the community that are K through 8 instead of 9 through 10, or 9 through 12, that actually drove up the K-8 rate by 1.1 cents. So now I could do that math. 6.9 plus 1.1 would be 8 cents, which means the total tax rate would only be going up 1.3 cents if it wasn't for the 7 cent base rate increase and the increase in the percentage of kids in K-8. Income sensitivity. For K-8, here you don't have the common level of appraisal, so you just take the base rate, which is increasing by 0.04%, times the spending adjustment, times the percentage of kids who are K-8 to get this rate. It's going up from 1.75 to 1.83. If it wasn't for that 0.04% increase, it would only be 1.79. And without the increase in the percentage of kids who are K through 8, it would be 1.77. So it would only be going up 0.02 without those two factors. So this chart shows what happens when we add in the high school rate to come up with a total K-12 rate. And you can see that that rate is estimated at $1.54. The footnote is a little misleading. Technically, the U46 budget hasn't been approved yet. They should do that next Monday, but I don't anticipate any changes. You can see that we started at an impact of about $148.9, and we got it down by about $11. That impact per $100,000 in property would be $31 instead of $138, if not for that 7-cent base rate increase. Now you know why that was listed as a challenge on the first one of the first slides that we showed. Since most of the people pay taxes based on a combination of property and income, you really need to look at those town meeting tax grids to kind of estimate what your tax will be. Unfortunately, those haven't come out yet. Those will be available at the informational meeting in April. And if I get them in time, they'll be in the annual report. The income sensitivity tax rate for K through 12 is 2.83 when you add in the high school. And once again, that impact for $50,000 in income would only be $25 if not for the base rate increase instead of $55. And this is kind of a celebration slide. You know, in FY11, we were below the excess spending penalty threshold by $1,444. We've actually been able to open that gap as the years have gone on. This year, we're $2,125 below the gap, or below the threshold, and it's actually projected to get larger in FY15, almost $2,300 below the excess spending threshold. And then we'll move on to the capital plan. The capital plan has been funded with the district's capital reserve fund, which allowed for capital investments with no tax implication. Significant withdrawals in FY7 and 8 reduced the amount that was in the fund. To extend the life of the capital plan, we reduced the amount that we spend in the capital plan starting in FY09. And then we also introduced a new article for $100,000 in new tax revenues. Unfortunately, in FY14, we were dealing with some significant tax implications, so that article wasn't presented in FY14. We are proposing this year a $25,000 article to gradually build up that amount so that that tax impact, as I mentioned earlier, won't be overwhelming when that reserve fund is depleted. So this shows in FY15 that we kept the amount at $226,000. And just to go through what some of these requirements are for doors, we're wanting to replace all the exterior and interior door locks at Fleming. Here at Summit, they're the last school with the old system for the clock and paging system, and that is something that we just can't get parts for anymore, so we need to fix that. Also, here at Summit, if you face the building and to the left on the outside of the building, there's concrete steps that go along the side of the building. Those are very narrow and kind of treacherous. We'd like to fix those and make them so that they're not quite so treacherous to go up and down. Child nutrition equipment. We have a van that goes from the high school to the EJ schools, and I've been told that the frame on that van is not going to pass inspection. We need to get a new van, so we're going to do that. Roof repairs. Essex Junction owns the mechanics garage, which is used by the high school, and you get rent from the high school for them to use that, but you are the owner of that building, the landlord, that roof is 50 years old and is kind of leaking badly, so we really need to take care of that, or else we'll lose our tenant.
50 years.
Yeah, 50 years. At Fleming, we have a stage curtain that's dates back to 1955 that we'd like to replace. It was on the capital plan because when we initially looked, the stage curtain was a lot more money, so the price has gone down. So that's why it still happens to be on the capital plan, just because it used to be a higher dollar amount. For information technology, we have infrastructure needs, which include switches, wireless access points. At ADL, we want to put an epoxy coating on 4 of the bathroom floors. We've done that in a few places instead of that painted concrete. Makes the floors a lot less slick and is a lot better to maintain. And then there are some potentially significant projects in the future, not in FY15, that we've got our eye on. The biggest one is the roof repairs for ADL and Fleming, which those are coming up. Those are 20 years old, I think. So we're trying to set aside the money to be able to replace those without having to bond for it. And then we also are thinking there might be the need for a renovation project at ADL at some point with family and consumer science, special ed, maybe a kitchen. So that's kind of on the radar. And then this slide just shows that after FY15, there'll be about $600,000 left in the Capital Reserve Fund. The chart at the bottom shows how we can incrementally transition from that capital fund by adding $25,000 every year. So you can see, in FY15, we'd have $25,000 article, bump it up to a $50,000 article next year, then $75,000, and then just have to deal with a $25,000 impact as far as taxes are concerned. And at FY23, then we'd be able to get to a point where we had new tax revenue coming in before that capital reserve fund is depleted. And then just one slide on a security article. And this was briefly touched on a moment ago. To get buzz-in systems at each of the 4 pre-K-8 schools and bullet-resistant window film, at least to get a start on that, we would need $35,364. Obviously, we would need to develop some protocols for the buzz-in system if we did that. The window film would only be installed on selected windows as we start, and then we would have to expand that. It's being proposed as a separate article to gauge the community's position on this topic. And the reason is, this is not an educational issue per se. This really has to deal with kind of a fundamental change in the way the school interacts with the community. So since they're community schools, the board wants to get the community's view on this. That's why this is going to be a separate article. This is the only thing that has not been factored into the tax rate calculations. So if this was approved, there would be an additional 2.3 cents or 0.23 cents added to the tax rate. To summarize, before we get into rec, the school district budget is $17,885,282. The expense budget is a bit misleading because we have special education reimbursements to cover that special education cost that's in there. The education spending increase since FY11 is 2.9% per year, although this year it's a much larger bump from one year to the next. Our education spending per pupil, though, is the critical dollar or the critical amount that has to do with our spending adjustment and tax rates, and that is only up 3.9%. The capital plan is level at $226,000. We talked about the new article for $25,000 in new tax revenue. We talked about the security article of $35,364 just to install the system and to get some window film on some of the windows. And that's it for the junction, for the school district. Whenever we get into the rec department, They also have an achievement slide to celebrate some of the things that have happened there, like extending electricity to the new pavilion, opening the dog park, the fact that the preschool program is full, that they support 160 kids and Village Kids, all the great events that they've got going, the fact that our rec advisory council members they're fantastic people, and 3 of them have extended their term. The one kind of sad note is that we're losing Mark Brislin, or lost Mark Brislin, who was the assistant director for 7.5 years. But the good news is that he accepted a director position, so good for him, and hopefully we can bring on a very good replacement. Some of the significant revenue changes. In rec, we actually have a higher fund balance by $43,500. That's because program revenues came in higher than anticipated. Property taxes are estimated to come in about $6,100 higher next year, not because of a tax rate issue, but because we're assuming maybe a minor increase in the grand list. Youth program fees are down $50,000. Mostly that's because we're transferring at one of these camps, this grades 6 through 9 camp, from youth program to licensed childcare, because that's really a more appropriate place to capture it. We're also discontinuing the winter swim lessons, unfortunately. Licensed childcare is up almost $93,000. Part of that is because of transitioning that camp from youth program. And then we also added a camp for K through 5. And then we're having a little bit of an increase in the daily rate for Village Kids. Adult and senior programs are increasing. The revenue is increasing about $18,000 because of offering overnight long-distance trips. Community program is up about $4,000. We have a lot more participants in the half marathon, so we're bringing on like a professional timer to come in. So that'll be an increase in cost, but because we have so many more people coming in, we have more revenues. All the other categories combined net out to about $1,600 more in revenue. On the investment side, salaries is up about $55,000, mostly because about half of that is probably because of that new K-5 camp called Camp Reach. The SU assessment is up about $8,800. That's allocated between the rec department and the school district based on staffing levels from the current year, so FY15 staffing levels. Technology hardware is up about $17,000, and a lot of this is infrastructure type costs. It's a good time to make these investments since we actually have an increased fund balance. That way, if the fund balance decreases next year, then we can reduce some of these one-time costs and not feel the impact as much. I talked about those overnight long-distance trips being an increase in revenues. Well, they're also an increase in the field trip expense. Speaking of field trips, licensed childcare field trips are up about $13,000. Part of that is that new K-5 camp that we brought on. And then everything else kind of combined is an increase of about $5,800. As the note says, you could attribute that to a few different things, but one area that's increasing is additional supplies for camps. And then we look at the capital fund for rec. And as I mentioned, it's limited to 1 penny on the tax rate, which we're estimating to be about $106,000 for next year. Most of the increase between FY14 and FY15, changing from a flat dollar amount to 1 cent, would be used to improve the pool, for pool maintenance and repair. But looking at all those FY15 requirements for playground equipment at Maple Street, we're looking at putting in boundaries and borders. We're looking at putting in parking lot lights for resurfacing, playground chips in case kids fall off of some of the equipment. For fencing, we're looking at the front fence at Maple Street Park, finishing that off, and then also kind of redoing the fencing at the skate park so we have a better line of vision into the skate park. Pool maintenance and repair. We're putting in new pool stairs for the large pool and then collecting money over the next 2 years to be able to resurface the small pool. And there's another slide that kind of shows what we're dealing with there. For maintenance equipment, we're going to collect money for the next 3 or 4 years. so that we'll be able to replace the truck and the tractor/mower, whichever goes first. For park amenities, there's some items listed there that we want to bring on for FY15, including water fountains, benches, some conference room equipment, some outdoor holiday lights, and then, of course, the recurring about $5,500 for landscaping each year. And this is just a quick slide to give you some information about the pool. You know, the pool is 15 years old, and it is showing some signs of age. The small pool, as you can see, we go through this kind of a process every year, getting rid of the loose pieces and doing patchwork, but really the whole thing just needs to be resurfaced. The third paragraph here lists some of the other requirements that are coming up. That bottom paragraph just kind of gives you a little bit of a scope of what we have, what the value of the pool is. You know, we have 16,000 people coming into the pool every year. We have 2,000 people who get taught swimming lessons. We employ 40 lifeguards and swim instructors. It brings in a lot of revenue, a lot of visitors. To summarize rec, the total budget is $1.7 million. It's an increase of 7.1%, but it's constrained by a level tax rate, and that additional increase is covered by program revenues, which make up about 60% of the budget. The capital plan is $106,000 estimated. What it really is whatever will come in based on 1 cent added to the tax rate. Wow, and that's it. Informational hearing will be on Monday, April 7th at 6:30, and the vote is Tuesday, April 8th. And that's all I have for you. Any questions or anything?
My only question is, and it's really, I'm not sure how to proceed on this as far as the request that was made about the natural playground. To have a discussion about that as far as altering the money, you know, what we've proposed for a budget. Any insight? I don't know.
That
This is the first time this has occurred, so I don't
Yeah, that
really
was
know the procedure on this.
That was going to be a question I was going to ask also. I mean, there's clearly a precedent where we've spread projects over multiple fiscal years. My only question is the timing, and has there been any discussion before this? You know, this is our 5th go-round of the budget process, and this is 90+% baked before we got here tonight.
Right.
So, you know, where do we go from here?
I hear you. That's what I'm struggling with too.
To me, it's a no-go. It came too late.
Well, I guess I also look at it as we made a decision at one point earlier to reduce the budget by reducing the time of an individual. And so if I were going to be putting, at this point, if I were going to be putting any money back, I would look at
Putting the individual
back first. Just because of the direct, well, I don't want to say that the natural playground isn't an impact on the kids, but just the in-class time impact for the students.
But the greater issue, we haven't discussed part of the capital plan.
Mm-hmm.
I think we need to discuss in greater detail. Do the other playgrounds need upgrading? We need further discussion on this just to make sure we're capturing them all and how much.
Right.
And I think that's a next year's discussion.
I agree. Anybody else have any additional input? Based on experience?
I guess I have a question. Tim, help me understand the timing of the proposal relative to the window of time that we have to operate with to define the budget.
I think it was a little just bit of an oversight. You know, we kind of planned, Mary kind of worked with Mary to kind of plan to give an update with the principal's report. And so I think that just got kind of put into this month's meeting, but I didn't realize, you know, from a few months back that was this was also the timeline with the end of the cycle. So that was really just an oversight.
A lot of.
I think it's, you know, I didn't focus on it there, and I think we recognize that the standard method, and this makes sure everybody, is that we didn't really want, the standard method is the PTO of each school takes care of the playground. That's been the understanding in the community. So we discussed this even internally, you know, with our group. But because of what this is, and because we really do see it as more than just a playground and we're just gonna have a new playground structure for the kids, that it's really this bigger thing, and we're putting trees in and we're restructuring the whole thing. And then when you look at it, it's really gonna be like a park. That's why we came to ask for the board for money. If it was just the playground, that really wouldn't be, we don't do playground improvements, you know, by asking to go in the budget.
Because of the scope of the project.
Because of the scope of the project and how big it is, we know we have a huge challenge. I mean, it's not by any means guaranteed that we're gonna make this money that we need to raise to be able to do it in this timeline for sure, but eventually, yeah. So that it becomes a selling point for us too, that we can, the more things we can kind of chalk up that how we're funding it, that then the better story it is for everybody that we're spreading it around.
I think the idea has a lot of merit. However, having been a board member yourself, you know that in the budget process, when the wheels start turning, we're in our 5th meeting.
Sure.
And that these types of things, if they're gonna gain traction, they kinda have to be introduced the first or second night, or then things kinda head down a path.
Or in September.
And I do recall Mike's point of, if we were gonna put any add backs in, those were gonna be on people.
Right.
As opposed to new projects. So timing's tough.
Yeah, and I didn't really realize I saw it more as addressing you as the Parks and Rec board. Maybe there's a whole issue about property and where we think it has to go and all that. So I think that was the other piece of it, is that to go in that budget.
Right.
But you know, whatever, you guys have to figure out where the money goes.
But I guess I definitely feel like this would be an ongoing topic moving forward. I personally, I guess I just don't think that we can add anything to the budget right now. Grant?
Yeah, I think that there's, you know, the dollar amount isn't huge.
No.
So I think it is a little late to put in to the budget at this point. So I wouldn't advocate for that. But I would say that as the year goes on, as we see how we might execute some things and under-execute other things, if I have some flexibility in like insurance, you know, there might be areas where during the year, you know, if there's another presentation that's made and and the board is comfortable with where we are, if you were to direct me at some point during the year, hey, could you try to find $7,500? I could always take that on and come back to you. So I don't think it's an insurmountable challenge if you are comfortable with doing it and ask me to do it during the year. I wouldn't want to see it added at this point, but I do think that with a $16 million budget, there's a chance that we could find it during the year of execution if you're comfortable with it. I would definitely think we'd want Tim or somebody to come back, like whenever I'm sure you have another meeting probably with the Planning Commission to talk about phase 2. I mean, at one point there were 4 phases, and I think maybe that's whenever the last time the Planning Commission saw it. But so like maybe a good timing would be whenever the group goes to the Planning Commission, gets approval for the next phase, for them to come in and then share that with you. And then if you're in a comfortable place, you could ask me to try to find that money, which I would hope I could do.
I definitely like that idea. So I guess that's kind of the approach I'd like to take then.
I'd like to have, whether we take that approach or not, I'd like a future agenda item, whether it's April or May. I would like to know how all the playgrounds, when were they updated? Are they going to need items also? You know, is this going to become a request from all the schools? You know, I'd like to know in advance so that we have an idea if it needs to go into a capital plan.
Well, do any other schools have large improvement projects for the playgrounds?
Not that I'm aware.
Right. So the only reason I'm coming here, like I said, is because it's really almost a land use change, right? They're completely redoing it. Otherwise, PTO normally upkeeps playgrounds, so I wouldn't expect any other school to come back with a request for money unless they start putting years of effort into it like this has been. Right. I'd like to support this. I mean, this has been a large undertaking. It's been going on for years, and it'd be nice to. A few $1,000 doesn't seem like a lot to push us along, but it's late to add away.
Right.
So just to clarify what Grant just said, if $7,500 was available as we end the current fiscal year and the board wished to stage its contribution, that directive would be helpful in knowing that it would be possible for you to make a $7,500 donation at the end of this fiscal year.
But yeah, I guess we could see when the presentations occur, because it could either be at the very end of the year or it could be at the beginning of the year, whenever. Because I've already kind of gone through a lot of the flexibility we have as a district. But at the beginning of the year, it might work out too.
I know that's not exactly the answer you were hoping for, but is that something you can work with?
Yeah, that's pretty good. I
Okay.
mean, sure, I'd love to have it all up front right
Yes.
now, approved. But I think it also works out well because we'll have a better picture for all our other sources of funding also as we move forward. So then it can be more specific, and it can be, oh, we just need this last bit because we're ready to get a contract and we need to have the money in hand, and so can you just add on this, this little bit to get us to that point so we can get a contract for 118 or whatever it is that we're going to ultimately.
Right, because as you mentioned,
have to contract for.
there was a few. I know you don't know what all the grants may come in at, or maybe even available, whatever, but some of them may involve community match, and knowing those ahead of time.
Exactly right. If one of those
will.
came up, then that could be.
And that's where I kind of, at least right now, I see we're trying to find a little bit here or there to match those kinds of things. So, great.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks. All right.
I do. You're looking for a motion?
So, next thing would be then to motion to adopt and sign the annual warning. Is that correct?
I'm going to make a motion that we approve the Essex Junction School District budget for year 15 in the amount of $17,885,282.
Is that it? Is that where
That's it. We've got
do each
more.
one. Okay, I just want to make procedure. Okay, is there a second to that? Any additional discussion on the motion for the budget of $17,885,282? No? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 4-0.
Do you need this article next?
So I think you can just have a motion to approve the warning. Or do we need to read the entire warning?
We have to approve the Essex Junction's rec department budget also, right?
Yeah, I think the easiest thing would probably be just have one more separate motion, and that would be for the rec department budget, although you're not going to get the total dollar amount from the warning. You get the dollar amount from, I'll give you the chart. And then maybe after that, it would be to just approve the warning itself.
Mhm.
So here's the,
EJRP 17, got it right here. 1
Okay.
million.
I move that we approve $1,742,988 for the Essex Junction Recreation and Parks for year 2015.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second?
I would second that one.
Jeff Colton.
So we have Jeff, second. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor of the 1.742988 for the EJRP budget, say aye.
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 Aye. Motion passes 4-0. And then I believe we need one final motion for approving to sign the annual warning. Is that correct?
Yes, and you might want to take a peek at that warning and go through the articles that'll be found for RETN.
Okay, so would we just read it, the whole thing?
I would, well, you already did Article 1, which was the amount for the Essex Junction School District budget.
Right, that's Article 3.
Right. Article 4 would be the article you should probably start with.
Okay, so not sure what the language would be. I'd start with this though. Just the warning, the annual warning, or the warning for the. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Whereupon, after disposition of said business, said meeting shall be adjourned to the following day, Tuesday, April 8th, 2014, when legal voters are hereby notified and warned to meet at the Essex Community Educational Center Union School District number 46 in the village of Essex Junction between the hours of 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. to vote by Australian ballot on Articles 3 through 9. Article 3, shall the voters of Essex Junction appropriate $17,885,282 necessary for the support of the schools for the year beginning July 1st, 2014. Article 4, if Article 3 is approved, shall the voters of Essex Junction appropriate an additional $35,364 for the purchase and installation of access control, buzz-in systems, and bullet-resistant film. Article 5, shall the voters of Essex Junction appropriate $25,000 necessary to supplement the Capital Reserve Fund in support of the district's capital plan. Article 6, shall the voters of Essex Junction appropriate $617,100 of tax revenues necessary for the support of the Recreation and Parks Department for the year beginning July 1st, 2014. Article 7, shall the voters of Essex Junction authorize the sum equivalent to a 1-cent tax on the municipal grand list for the Recreation and Parks Department Capital Reserve Fund. Article 8, to elect 2 Prudential Committee members, one for a term of 2 years and one for a term of 3 years. Article 9, to elect 1 Essex Community Educational Center Union District number 46 School Director for a term of 3 years. So now I need a motion.
I would make a motion to approve the warning as read by our chair.
Is there
I'll
a second?
second.
Second by Marla. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor of approving the motion?
Aye.
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 4-0. Yay.
Can I, on camera, I would like to compliment Grant.
Yes.
Mary's here. I don't know if Mary's aware of when we do these budget meetings. I told Grant at our last one. We're very lucky to have him, and I know other school districts keep coming and trying to take him, which I don't like, but I know why they want him, because he actually can propose budgets that are to the best interest of children. it isn't just dollars and cents with Grant. He has a lot of caring, and he knows the programs. He can explain them to us, and I find it almost makes the principals unnecessary at any of those meetings.
You couldn't do without us.
Couldn't do without you in the beginning, but it's like you can trust him when he's
all the way through.
Marla, I was thinking along the same lines. I was thinking, Grant, even though you cleared the room with your presentation, when we're presenting a budget, it can get lost with the ratios of education spending per equalized pupil and all that. And I hope what people think when they go into the voting booth is, this budget's been vetted by the board. It includes us meeting all our contractual obligations for our faculty, for our staff, for our administrators. The real question is that up this so many cents or pennies on per thousand and all that? I really hope people think, is this budget is this school district delivering value for our families, for our students, for our community at large? And if it is, and if people think that, then I hope they vote yes. Same thing. Each of the ballot items need to be weighed on their own merits. But the real question is Essex Junction School District delivering value for our children, for our families, and for our community at large?
Well said. Thank you.
Thanks.
But we couldn't do it without you, Grant.
Yes.
Well, and the principals are the ones that get me smart with what I present to you, so thank you to the principals.
Thank you.
I did see all the stories up there. Glad you failed it.
I think you're going to miss Mary too, aren't you,
I
Grant?
don't want to talk about it.
We'll just have to,
Grant
get to
was
break
very
in
upset
somebody
at our
else on how
last
you want things
meeting when
done.
We talked about it, Mary.
All right, let's move on to CCSU board update. A couple of big events coming up for the CCSU board. I believe it's the 18th. We will be conducting interviews with the superintendent candidates. I'm meeting with the executive committee on the morning of the 12th, so this Wednesday morning. Those are the big ones that I am working off.
System 2 that you approved a new data system.
Oh.
Last SU meeting, that's another biggie.
Right. Well, I was focusing on the
Yeah, that one's big too.
the other two.
He's more worried about the superintendent
Yes.
search. But no, we did talk about a new data system.
Right.
And the SU, I believe, did agree and make a motion to accept the money that we're going to need for 3-year. I think it's a
Yes.
3-year program, and the PowerPoint that they're using for
Right.
students now will be worked over
That's
into
just
this
meetings,
program.
Right, it's compatible with our current
Those are
SIS
meetings
system,
out-
and Admin Inform was approved. So,
We
enter our
also finally talked about, it was an executive session, but warned, we finally talked about the current superintendent's evaluation. We're a few months behind the summative eval, but we've caught up. So hopefully that can reassure Judy that we're trying. And I'm trying to think. We also, Leaders at Work, which was a part of it, the timeline for the superintendent's evaluation, we're catching up with it. So that's why we need to talk about goals, and we need to talk about some of the other things tonight. Like one of the things we talked about that night was the policy B20, board staff communications, because our board keeps bringing up, that communication, that piece hasn't happened at the policy meetings, and at CCSU level, some other board members said that they felt there were no changes needed here. They felt that the wording was correct, that it was the interpretation of it. So they charged us all to come back to our boards and discuss it and bring it to the next CCSU meeting, March 24th. Is that it?
discuss it. So this is a great time to review that now as far as feedback that you want to bring back to the SU.
Has everyone had a chance to
I,
take a look over the?
we don't have a procedure that goes with this, right? We just have this policy.
Right.
Because
Find one.
I wasn't fine, because we talked about it at CCSU level as we think it's an interpretation issue. And I wish Jennifer was here tonight because she is the one that has the issues with the B20 policy and has been concerned that it hasn't been addressed at the policy task team meetings. So my question was there a procedure? And I guess a part I saw in this is because this discussion came about was after the climate study committee meetings, and I went to those to watch Charlie. She wanted someone else there in the audience. And I think what I got out of it, that staff seem to feel that their voices aren't heard, and when they've gone to a principal, they've gone to the superintendent, what's the next recourse? Which I believe it started off with them doing a survey and writing a letter to the CCSU board, and I know there was some friction there because of the policy being broken. So I think it goes back to that main issue.
So where there was a policy violation in B20 was when official communication, and that's, I think, the part in this policy for people to understand, that official communication needs to be submitted to a principal or a supervisor or the superintendent before it reaches the board, if it's official communication. What happened in the survey that you're talking about and referring to is that it wasn't vetted through the superintendent. The superintendent received it at the same time the board members received it. So, so that was a policy violation, and whether the survey was to be accepted or not was a bone of contention for a while, until the SU board determined that the best way to handle it was to create a committee to study the concern about climate, which occurred, and the result is that for the next 3 years a national school climate survey was identified as a tool and will be implemented in all of our schools for the next consecutive 3 years. And as Mary referred to earlier tonight, the first year data was very favorable in all areas except one, and that area, it was still an average area, but it's in the area of social and emotional well-being, both for faculty and staff and parents. And I think it's just reflective in the National Climate Committee personnel that creates this survey, who looks over all that data from the different surveys that come in nationally, said that our scores were really excellent, and that that area is problematic, I think, throughout our nation. I think it speaks to safety concerns that we all have, that you've been grappling with as a board for the last few months. I think it has to do with mental health issues that we're all struggling with as a society, and how best to create treatment opportunities, as well as some of the drug addictions that the governor spoke to in his State of the Union address. You know, those things, I think, shake the public's confidence as far as social and emotional well-being. And it's just a fact of the times of when, you know, the fact of where we find ourselves as a society right now, and regaining some of those supports those necessary supports for people to get the services they need. It also gave the principals an opportunity, and we have a principal here that you can check in with, to meet with faculty and staff and talk about what can we do to improve in that area. And you'll find in your action plans this year, all of our schools took the results very seriously and brainstormed with their staffs and created some very doable action steps that will be reported out to you in June when you review your school action plans. And the current survey is going to be implemented the week of March 14th. So we're gearing up for the second round to see, is this a second year of consistency with our scores? We trust the validity and reliability of this survey. That team spent quite a bit of time choosing a tool that we had confidence in, and from it came a good outcome. So I think back to this policy, it's when there's an official communication, and where there may be a concern, we all know that there's a protocol to get that concern resolved at the place where the concern lives. So if it's a concern of a child in the classroom, and we want that parent then to be talking with the teacher. We want that to always be the first step. If that can't get resolved, then the principal steps in and sees what they can do to help remedy the situation. And usually it doesn't go further than that, because usually there's always a resolve. If it doesn't resolve, then it would come to the superintendent. And I would work with the principal in creating a resolution. It's when it violates and goes to the board, or it comes to me before the teachers had an opportunity to respond, or before principal has an opportunity to respond. That's the purpose or the spirit and intent of this policy. So it's not to block communications, as far as, sometimes you hear, well, as a teacher, I'm maybe not supposed to talk with you. I think that teachers, as you saw today, have lots of wonderful stories to share. And I want our board members to be available to hear those stories when you come to open house. And those are invaluable communications that you have and should be promoted. This is when we speak about different kinds of communications, and it's typically if there's conflict involved or complaints. And we have another policy that manages that. But this is to keep, that chain of command in place, and ensuring that everybody who should be in the loop is in the loop. And so if there's a place, and it has been rewritten in the last 10 years, 3 times, to try to convey that message that it's not about blocking our communications, but rather understanding the chain of command with the formal communications or the official communications on how reports are made. Is that helpful?
Yeah, and so when I've been reading this, it's almost like, I think there's an informal and there's a formal.
Yes.
And that's
very
the
much
part
so.
that I think is missing. I mean, it's okay to spell out the formality, but from what staff or other people have said, and I as a board member, you're wondering what to say or not to say. And there's a piece under staff communications to the board. Like, I think this policy protects the staff from the board. Most of this, I think, is more board related, so that, like, I as a board member do not walk into Mary's school and say, I don't like you're doing this, Mary, and this should be done this way, because we know that's happened in the past with some board members. So I take this policy as being very good, protecting the staff from the board. The thing I don't get from here is, how do staff members feel comfortable coming to a board meeting, and if they've got an issue they want to talk about, it's a public meeting. how do you make it so that they can feel comfortable to speak up when we have board meetings? Not the grievance. There's a formal, because I think that's the formal. We're talking grievance, but for instance, if there was a safety issue and a staff member didn't think it was being handled by the time they went to the principal, the superintendent, then what's the next recourse? Because I know I, as a board member, I should always feel responsible to report a safety issue.
Absolutely.
Like if I was touring a school and I saw something that was safety related for a student, then I think that's when you should speak up. That's when you don't fool around with a protocol. It's fast. You want to get it taken care of. So how do you, and that's been the way it is for years, how do we make them feel comfortable that we're responding to them or can respond to them?
Well, I think that what you're doing here tonight, Summit Street School, is you're building relationship. You're hearing directly from the faculty and staff, and I think they shared some of the programs they had, and actually I think the Natural Playground Committee came forward and said, we're struggling with money, and fundraising. So I think you heard some struggles of a desire to build on an initiative. So I think it's through these kinds of formats that you do that. You would not want somebody who would stand up and talk about a personnel matter while RE10 is filming that may be under an investigation and only permissible under an executive session. You want to safeguard privacy, and you want to reassure folks, and hopefully it's as much a board's responsibility as it is administration's, to ensure that when we receive a concern that we act promptly. We have guidelines that tell us, the number of days that we have and to respond, and you build trust, I think, in the system. And so when people feel like their concerns have been heard and that we might not have an immediate remedy to something, but we at least try to play out a timeline as far as how to respond. And for most urgent issues concerning safety, for example, I can't imagine any principal not hearing that immediately and ensuring that we take quick action on it. That happens all the time, especially when we had these parking lot issues in the beginning of this year, and plans are made. So, I think it's as much about building a culture of trust as it is about having a policy that guides our communications.
So, but I guess when I read this, I'm wondering if there's a way to break down formal versus informal. And then after what you've said, I don't know, maybe it comes through the communications task team, but how do we ensure that all boards within the supervisory union are trying to build that trust? Is it policy driven or is that communication driven?
Well, I think it's part of the climate results that boards are receiving too, to see where those concerns are coming from, to have a close understanding of the issues at hand. This is really focused on communications, and I think the question that the SU board grappled with is it the wording or the spirit and intent? What is it about this policy feels restrictive to those communications between staff and board members? That's the part where in wording we don't understand.
I don't see it.
When you read it, do you see anything wrong with it, or do you see a way it could be improved?
Nothing. It seems fairly straightforward. The first line is all official communication. all official communication.
Mm-hmm.
And it concludes with, you know, with the social interaction, which is, you know, the other end of things where it's,
We live in a small town.
Yeah.
You're gonna run into people.
Right.
So, because I think the problem at the SCCSU meeting, the next board meeting we have, are they directed to keep looking at this, or are we going to say we're happy with this the way it is?
Or it was at next policy meeting, which is before the next CCSU meeting, to come up with something. Either no changes or, and that's really where I think Jen's needed it. She was kind of speaking for people who plan for it.
Right. And at the CCSU meeting, some of the members that are on the policy, they thought this was finished and did not need further discussion. They felt that it was an interpretation issue and not a policy issue.
So the policy committee's stuck because they don't understand what feedback or what needs to change in it. They're trying to garner feedback from local boards to see what's problematic about this policy that we haven't been able to put it to bed in over a year now. And I think you actually mentioned where it became problematic, the event that caused the concern. The event recurred this year. So, as superintendent, I stepped in and redirected and said this is a policy violation and how can we resolve it? And we've put together a meeting where we could talk about it and the issues. So I think we just have to continue to talk about wherever it is that's problematic so we can adjust it. But I think that for the most part, I think our boards do a terrific job, and our faculty and staff, with understanding the spirit of this policy. And every now and then a violation occurs, and we just have to revisit if it's somebody not familiar with the policy, or remind ourselves, okay, if we're going to go on a tour of the school, let's just check in on policy to make sure what it's supposed to look like. I think it just gives you good guidance. And I think it's helpful for the staff to know these are the areas of what to expect with communications. You're here for open house nights. I think there has been a lot of work in trying to rebuild a culture of trust and visibility and relationship, and that we continue to do it and not have to rely on concerns about a violation of something that we have all appreciated over time has a purpose and an intent behind it, as far as making sure those people who need to know first. So unless there's something specific to the policy, all our boards are reviewing it this month. I'm sorry that Jen isn't here.
Right.
Because that's really difficult. She's representing the PC at these policy meetings, and this policy continues to be on the table. So if she's the person representing you, what is it that you're asking of her to change? Because this is definitely a PC board concern.
Yes.
Are you on that committee,
Yes, I am,
Dave?
yeah.
Yeah. So do you see any wording in this or a change?
No, I just remember that being where, again, it was interpretation. I'm trying to remember back what words they want to change. It was minor changes they really wanted. But I don't remember exactly what it was.
Did we ask Jen to send us the changes that she wanted to see?
Yeah.
Because we don't have another meeting till March?
As this group?
Yeah.
It's
April.
technically in April, but
Yes.
I think that I know that we're gonna have to have a March meeting now. I have an executive session need. Plus I'll miss you if it's that long.
Right. Well, then I can communicate with Jen that she needs to, I guess, distribute to us what the concerns are. Because I honestly don't know.
Is it possible, I know that we're not supposed to communicate unless it's and violate open meeting laws, but if I don't have some kind of communication from her as to wording she's looking at, I can't come into the next meeting and just keep discussing it.
Right.
So
if we wanted to send a note to Jen saying, could you highlight those words or the changes that you would like to see in the policy, you're not taking any board action. You're just receiving information. As long as it's not a reply all, I don't agree with this change, blah, blah, blah kind of thing, you can at least receive information. So maybe, Michael, as the chair, you could reach out to her and ask her what the verbiage is that she wanted to see revised in the policy so we can understand it moving forward. Because there's other policies waiting.
yeah, we're behind.
Yeah, we've been stuck here for a while.
Okay, I'll take care of that.
Thank you.
And then her response, then I will distribute to everyone. Okay, task teams?
Leaders at work, we're going to have a meeting on February 18th, but I think that's going to end up being canceled.
Yes.
And we are still working on superintendent evaluation and I believe timeline.
And annual work plan goals.
Yes, annual
Okay,
work
so
plan
annual work
goals.
plan, yep. Was that, so I know that you say that, I was trying to think of, because the executive committee is now gonna, it's a CCSU meeting on the 18th?
Yes.
So didn't we bump that,
Leaders at work.
the leaders
meeting.
at work, right?
Yeah. that's what Marla
Did you say it? I'm
said.
sorry.
Yeah.
She just
I was
said
writing
we
down
had
something,
to-
and so I probably missed
No,
that.
we've had
that
to
key
bump
bit.
it for a
Sorry.
CCSU meeting.
Right.
Okay, again. You guys have bumped a lot. Well, we kind of have a policy update already here. Is there anything additional out of policy?
Well, the next one we thought we discussed is school safety, or
Wellness.
Wellness, I guess.
Wellness.
That's right. Kind of coincide with the second one.
Right. Negotiations.
The council met last week, right?
Yeah, but there was another. Wasn't there another small group that was going to occur between?
That's Wednesday. The small group is meeting again.
Okay.
But the council met, the board council met last Thursday, I think, or Wednesday, last week.
Yes, it was last week.
And received an update of where we find ourselves to date with preliminary tentative approval in the different articles of the agreement. And heard a great report about the tone and tenor of the negotiations this year, and a willingness to work collaboratively to reach a unified agreement. That we'd have one teacher's agreement, and there has been lots of progress made in that area. It's a different negotiations this year. Process where there's a small group of teachers from the negotiations team and a small group of administrators walking through the contract as far as what the language changes mean, not really negotiating, but rather clarifying any questions with the consolidation of 3 contracts into one, and revisiting that language that has more of a contemporary.
Is there consensus, Judy, that the consolidation's a good thing from the association?
So it's good progress is being made.
Yeah, it was definitely good news when we met to get that information.
Yeah.
And then the expectation is perhaps starting the negotiation process on the I guess for lack of any other term, the big ticket items the salary benefits type things is probably going to begin early March timeframe.
Will that be finished by the end of this contract year?
It's the goal.
Yes.
That's the goal?
That's the goal.
Okay.
If
Keep it going.
if the way things have gone so far is any indication, I mean, it may not happen as quickly as some of the smaller things have gone, but you kind of get a positive impression of how it's going to go. Communications. We haven't had a meeting since, I mean, we've, since of all of our budget sessions. Our next meeting is tomorrow night. However, one of the things I wanted to put out was communication to the community about, the budget. And I had sent, just as kind of people thinking about what we're going to put out there, an initial discussion, of kind of, I've got a couple more if I need it, of kind of the language to put out to the community, whether it's in Front Porch Forum, Essex Reporter. I have a couple more if you need some. And I realize as far as the Essex Reporter, we wouldn't be able to get anything in for this week. I think the deadline's already passed. We would have had to do it technically before this meeting even occurred, to really get it in there. So I'd sent out something to start people thinking and get some feedback. And based on feedback I received, what you have in front of you now is close, at least I hope close to what we would like to put out there. So just take a moment to look over that. Obviously the biggest items to put out there is the overall budget, capital increase, the capital fund article, the EJRP budget, as well as its capital fund, and then additionally the separate article about security. And so I tried to word things in such a way that it was neutral but presented the information, it was informative for people, especially along the lines with the article on security, because it is so different. So if anybody has any feedback right now, go ahead and give it.
Can we give it to you? Do you need it by a certain date?
Well, I don't know how we want to present it within the communications team, because this is our own budget information. But I guess I would kind of like to get it out as soon as possible. So I guess within the next 48 hours, feedback. Okay. And that's your update on communications.
So I won't be there tomorrow night, Ben Vicky.
Right, I talked with Ben earlier and he mentioned that.
Yeah, he's going to facilitate the meeting. I'm going to be here.
Judy's got something else going on.
I'm working on the principal search, and I'll
Yes.
give you an update on it.
The only feedback I'd have, Mike, is
Yes.
under the first paragraph, if the statewide tax is up by 7 cents, I think I'd like to see clarity around it rather than say increase by a much higher percentage. Let's say what it is or what we think it is. Even if it's not, even if it's an uncomfortable number, let's
Put that
state
number
for clarity what it is.
Okay.
I mean, it is what it is.
It's pretty much black and white.
So it's going to be double digit.
Yes. But that's what it is. I mean, like I said, I feel the best way to get people talking about it and how you want to discuss it is to just to get to start with the information out there.
Do you want that percentage to be just the K-8 state tax rate increase percentage, or do you want it to be K-12 Essex Junction?
To be honest, I think just the K-8 right now.
Or grant, let me just think about this for a minute. Or does that take the conversation off what people are actually gonna be paying?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah, because most people do get the
right,
income
you're right.
I mean, I just think it evokes a negative response
Yeah.
Before people realize that it's melded between income sensitivity and homestead.
Then I still, I'm an advocate for clarity, but
Yeah.
if, what's the percentage of folks, Grant, that pay based on income versus value? You have a rough
It
number?
changes all the time. I think last year when somebody was discussing this, they said it was like 2/3. This year, the last time I've heard something, it was like 60%. So it seems like a little bit less are paying. with an income sensitivity.
Then maybe we remind folks that 60% of people participate to some degree in income sensitivity, and that everyone should refer to their the grid sheet to see what their actual impact is on them on a personal level, because they're going to have to make a decision on a personal
Right.
level.
And what you're seeing here would also, what I didn't write at the end of this is references to where all the additional information can
Which
be
could
found.
be in there.
Right. So that's just didn't have that as part of this. But nuts. You can see how we're struggling with how to clarify it without muddying it.
Yeah.
I think you're okay without that, Jeff, I think you're okay without that final percentage, because he's got here this amount, the 17 million.
Mhm.
This amount represents a 5.3% increase from last year's budget, and due in large part to higher special education costs and the need to add a 4th grade class. The only thing I think is confusing, Mike, is where you say, since we will receive additional special education reimbursement, and since we have increasing enrollment, our spending per pupil will only increase 3.9%. It's almost like in spite of, in spite of those things, we're coming in at a state average. I think that's important to have in there, that we're meeting the state average. We're just a little over the state average, right?
That's lovely.
So I think in
you.
there,
Okay.
that just sounds awkward to me, if that could be reworded.
Okay, I'll look at wordsmithing that a little bit and to clarify that a little bit more. Or expand it.
Yeah, and then unfortunately, statewide property tax rate is slated to increase by 7 cents. I don't know if people will understand that unless it's in proportion to what their income sensitivity might be, like you mentioned in the homestead. I don't know.
And keep in mind, this is just the initial communication. There will be, as we tried to do last year, lots more detail. Basically taking each chunk and detailing it out, expanding the information about it as we go along.
When do we think that the spreadsheet with the
Tax grid?
The tax grid will be available? Do you have a feel for that?
Usually it's well, quite frankly, it's usually me that's holding up the process, because I can't submit preliminary budgets until the boards approve them. So you've approved yours, I can submit that tomorrow, but U46 doesn't approve theirs until next Monday. And then I submit that. It's usually me that's last, because our meetings
Right.
are in April. So almost all the other towns and school districts have already approved their budgets and submitted the preliminary budget to the Agency of Education.
Okay.
But they can't generate the tax grids until everybody has sent those in. So we're one of the last ones. So I would say next week I'll send mine in. I would hope that they would maybe get them out by close to the end of the month.
They always come out before annual meeting. So March
Before the March
3rd
annual meeting
is
date, yeah.
the absolute time frame that will be available.
But they usually come out like the last week or two in February.
Right.
I mean, the point is, so our voters are going to have a full month
Yes.
to review the impact on their personal
Exactly.
situation.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
The last paragraph, Mike,
Yes.
the Prudential Committee also approved the budget for Essex Junction Recreation and Parks. The budget amount is $1,742,000, et cetera, which is an increase of 7.1%.
Mm-hmm.
That one's hard because technically it's probably an increase, but it isn't going to increase. We're doing still the level tax rate, correct? So that will come across to people, oh my goodness, my taxes are going to go up 7% there. But in reality, it's not. So that's a hard one. We have to be open to the public with what the increases are, but you know, I don't know how to explain that.
Maybe the next sentence should just start with a however, comma, because the next sentence does try to attack that, but I don't know that those sentences are linked. But if you did put like a however, comma, the municipal tax rate would be that level, then people will
Make the connection.
make the connection to understand.
Okay, yeah, good catch.
Good recommendation.
Okay. And as you have a little bit of time to actually to think about this, again, send me your questions and I will circulate.
I think I emailed you on the security one.
Mhm.
The security changes include a buzzer system that would delay an individual who has no reason to enter the school from gaining access. It would also mean that any individual with a valid reason to visit one of our schools would first have. The security changes would include a buzzer system. I don't know how you want to word it after school officially starts. I can see parents saying, oh my goodness, my kids are going to have to wait.
Right, but I think that gets to be a little bit more on policy and procedure on the buzzer. And we don't to be honest, that's not part of it. We haven't even had that discussion, or those that need to have that discussion haven't had that.
And it's the security changes will delay everybody, not just an individual that
Yeah.
has no reason to enter the school.
I actually did make a change. I don't remember, I forget what the wording was I had for it, but I forgot to put it in this. I
Okay.
have it on another document.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, the implication was there that everybody would be delayed, but I didn't say it directly, and so I was going to include that as an additional change.
But it's good. Good job.
All right. Well, since Judy mentioned it, what she's got going on tomorrow night, principal search update.
I have to search for another principal. As you see by the timeline, we reviewed this timeline during our budget meetings. So in accepting it, you allowed us to advertise. The school spring advertisement will close on Friday. I have to say I've been a little surprised in the number of applicants. I know I've been reading statewide that there's been a decline in applicants for administrative positions, but it's a lower number than I had anticipated at this stage of the game. And maybe it's because people are in budget season. I don't know if it's a timing thing, but
How many applications did you receive?
So far to date, I have 7.
7. So if in 7 you don't find that you're looking at quality, can we extend it?
So that's a good question.
I mean,
Mary's contract?
Yeah. Mary, let's extend you.
Yeah, so this timeline may need to be adjusted, just giving you some preliminary heads up there. We have met with the faculty last week at their faculty meeting and established a Google Doc where folks can give us some feedback to some questions that we asked as far as the criteria that we're looking for to inform our interview questions. the new problem or wrinkle there is we thought we would have 2 staff members, 2 faculty members and 2 staff members as part of the interviewing committee. And I think so far I have 12 that volunteered. So we're looking at adjusting this to create a time where more people can be involved as far as their opportunity to ask questions of some of the candidates. So we're rethinking that a little bit. And tomorrow night I'll be at the PTO meeting where I'm thinking that same problem might occur, which is actually a good problem to have. It's about involvement, and engagement with a position that's highly valued. And there's big shoes to fill, and I think a lot of voices and eyes in the decision will be a healthy. We'll be healthy. I just think we have to figure out how to structure it in a way that it's meaningful and timely. We do have some quality applicants. I don't mean to make it sound like we don't. It's just that I for some reason, I was expecting like 30 or 40 people, and I spoke with several superintendents, and they're finding the same thing to be true. If 10 to 15 is about the average number of applicants for some of these positions now. So it's something to think about, especially when we think about in the next couple of years, 40 to 50% of our teachers and administrators will be retiring. So recruitment is something to keep in mind when we're beginning to experience less folks being available. So the meetings have been great. The timeline's working okay for the time being. We'll look at some structural changes, but if there are any changes to the structure, I'll send out a communique to all board members so that you're aware. When we close on Friday, and we're meeting with the interview team on the 13th, we close on Friday, we meet with the interviewing committee. Actually, we changed it on the 13th because I'm double booked that day too. And we'll see what communication may come out of that meeting as far as an interest in extending timeline or any decisions that might come forward. Hard shoes to fill.
If it was that pressure is what's kept as many applicants.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Best job in there. Principals do.
Next year, when you're retired, are you going to be available for substituting for other principals or, for any consulting positions? No? No.
Thanks for saying no politely.
You have to start a new chapter. It's not enough to leave.
Yeah.
Can imagine. All right. Moving right along to our next item is the consent agenda, which consists of approving the warrants, approving the meeting minutes from 12/9, January 20th, January 23rd, the 28th, and the 30th of January. And then also approve a recommendation to deny professional study leave request.
So moved.
I have a question. Excuse me, on the leave request. Well, first off, the teacher signed a letter as from Essex High School. If they're Essex High School, why is it addressed to the Prudential Committee?
Right. That's one of those positions where it's a position of a person who's hired by the Prudential Committee, but is located at the high school.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
okay, that's fine.
Service in reverse.
Yeah.
Well, that's fine. Okay, I just didn't know if it was a mistake or something. Okay.
I know, I could see how that could be confusing.
Because all of our there's the ELL group is kind of a small group, so all ELL teachers happen to be EJ employees. So usually it's six
right.
employees that you're getting service from. This is an EJ employee that the high school is paying you for.
And I see the leave request is kind of, convoluted in that, but
There's a lot of uncertainty.
Right. Now, is that why it's being done? Recommendations?
If you see for any professional study leave, the second page of your org notes includes the recommendation from the professional study leave committee. So those committee members met, and their recommendation to deny was based on those 3 factors included, and their recommendation also is for her to consider a request as an unpaid leave of absence under Article 2.5. So I just think that there was a lot of uncertainty that they were grappling with. Do you have a second on that motion?
No, I'm waiting.
Plus the money piece was interesting because they're going to get paid, plus they still want to get paid by the district.
And
so
it was a lot of
that was
uncertainty.
a whole
You're
nother-
right.
It was strange. It was strange.
So there's not a second yet, Michael.
I know.
Okay,
Right.
just so you know, because I didn't.
Got it.
Marla motion.
So we have a motion on the table. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Second by Dave. Is there any additional discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of approving the consent agenda, say aye.
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 Aye. 4-0. Okay. Future agenda items. Our next meeting is currently scheduled for April 7th.
Correct.
And Judy has suggested we may need to meet.
Probably third week of March. I'm anticipating a meeting.
For riffs?
And I may not be there. It's my wife's 50th birthday, and I may.
Which one?
Which wife?
No, which meeting?
The April 10th. Oh, April 7th one.
Did this suddenly come up?
No.
No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
I've got to go to the meeting, I think.
I'll send out a meeting with
April 7th is our annual meeting.
It's a following meeting.
April 7th is our annual meeting.
Okay, I thought you said,
Right.
I thought you just said April 7th was the.
Is
Okay.
the- that's-
well,
that's-
either way.
That's our next
it's my
meeting.
50th. I may not be there. I think there's something being cooked up by friends. And
you're on camera.
You know what? She's ringing.
I hate to say she's not as good at
Cut the tape.
Bring him to the meeting.
Yeah, so we'll see.
Okay. No,
I'm just.
I understand.
I'm hearing things, so I'm like, okay.
So
I don't think saying no, I have to go to this meeting to go over well.
Well, you want a letter from the board chair?
Yeah.
See if that'll help.
I'm sure it'll go far.
Okay, so third week of March. We're looking
Right.
at the possibility of
There's
a
a
meeting.
possibility.
And would the entire meeting be executive session?
Yes.
Okay. So then, future agenda items for anything that's other than what would be on the annual meeting.
Right.
I don't know how far in advance we want to go. Obviously, we want to get an update on the, or at some point, get a continued update on the natural playground. I don't know how far that would be. I don't know. We will know already of the principal hiring by that point, I would think.
You may know.
In
March 31st is when we were looking to, well, actually, April 10th.
Yeah,
is your
April
meeting.
10th.
The 7th is the annual meeting, but the 10th is the Prudential Committee meeting. So that's when I'm hoping to bring you you will reorg, and I hope to bring a recommendation forward
right.
at that meeting.
Okay.
So it could be a quick meeting of one agenda item. I don't think you need to build an agenda around it. Unless you want to talk about budget communications and use that time, but by then you're pretty
Well, I think the budget communications in large part will come out of the communications committee.
Perfect.
I mean, that's what we've done in the past, and it seems it's expanded every year as far as how much communication is going out there. So I'd like to continue that model.
What dates do RIF notices have to go out? Huh?
I think, isn't it taxed April 15th?
I think so.
We have until April 15th.
Yes.
So we're going to know before then if our budget goes down in defeat. But
That's right.
we do have to make sure we have cut somebody a percentage of their job.
Right.
So we have to definitely make
yeah.
sure that's
Mhm.
there.
Right. That communication's in progress.
Any other items folks can come up with right now? And you can always feel free to send me
Right.
stuff between now and the next meeting, or the next agenda planning session.
I think by that April, we should know the goals that the CCSU board picked for the superintendent. The annual goals, we'll know
Okay.
the new superintendent's name, I assume. And so PC can be considering their goals.
All right. Got that one. All right. The last item, and I know Judy had mentioned that it may or may not be necessary.
It was resolved,
Okay, so
so there's no need for that.
no executive session needed. So all those have anything else to say? Say it now.
Or forever hold our peace.
Yes.
Huh?
So-
Oh, we got to go to another
so
meeting
we're
at
adjourned.
7.